The night sky presents a measurable three-dimensional volume. In this framework, that volume is a projection, a readable surface containing pullbacks of a deeper source. The first axiom of TCGS-SEQUENTION states, all physical content and every apparent stage of time exists within a timeless four-dimensional domain called the counterspace. This diagram represents the structural relationship. Our physical world is the lower plane, a three-dimensional shadow pulled back from that static four-dimensional geometry. The source structure is fixed. However, as different slices are taken through the crystal, the shadow on the grid below appears to change. This is foliation. What we record as the passage of time is a variation in the gauge, the specific angle by which we sample the source. Most scientific models treat this moving shadow as a self-contained system. They attempt to find the causes of every physical event entirely within the three-dimensional surface, as if the shadow explains itself. When the physics of the shadow plane fails to balance, we often conclude that the missing information must be a hidden substance. We invent local entities, like dark matter, to fill the gaps where our three-dimensional math breaks down. The framework shifts the investigator's role from a particle physicist to a cartographer. The goal is no longer to hunt for invisible matter within the shadow, but to determine the rules of the projection map. A cartographer prioritizes distinguishing stable source signals from optical illusions created by the slicing process. By identifying which features are projection-dependent, we can evaluate physical observations without needing to postulate new ontic sectors. Navigating the map requires a formal distinction between two types of observations: invariants and artifacts. An invariant is a structural signature that remains stable regardless of how the map is drawn. Whether we change the measurement corridor or the angle of the projection, these geometric relations survive unchanged. These are the legitimate targets of knowledge. They include conserved singular signatures and curvature relations that remain constant across different domains of physics and biology. In contrast, many observations are artifacts. These features morph or disappear depending on the specific slice or measurement regime used. They are real as observations, but they do not exist as stable structures in the source. We diagnose an artifact by checking for foliation dependence. If an observed phenomenon changes meaning or vanishes when the projection chart is updated, it is a byproduct of how we are reading the universe. We also look for missing information. If a theory requires adding a new, dark substance to make the shadow-level math work, it is likely misinterpreting a projection effect as a local physical entity. Once identified, an artifact is recognized as a distortion of the map. This prevents us from mistaking the limitations of the projection for the properties of the territory. Identifying the marks on the map is only the first step. To understand why those marks appear, we have to define the mathematical tool that draws them. This is the extrinsic constitutive law, or ECL. It acts as a universal response operator, the grammar dictating how four-dimensional content determines three-dimensional shadow behavior. The ECL is the projection law itself, not the resulting image. It preserves the invariance we measure on the surface. The formal operator, labeled here as E, calculates shadow observables by processing source content through the extrinsic curvature of the embedding. The geometry of the projection defines the resulting dynamics. In physics, this law shows that gravitational effects currently attributed to missing mass can emerge from the extrinsic geometry of the projection. If we account for the ECL, the same distribution of visible baryonic matter can produce the dynamics we observe in galaxy clusters. This logic easily extends to biological systems. Evolution and the convergence of specific traits can be modeled as the shadow expression of informational gradients already present in the source territory. Biological directionality arises because life follows these pre-existing source-level paths. Traits that seem to repeat across different species are predictable results of the ECL projecting the same source geometry into the biological shadow. This architecture leaves one final question: who is reading the map? Standard materialism views the brain as a local generator that produces consciousness from unconscious matter. The framework identifies the consubstantial experience level, or CEL. This suggests that experience belongs to the source itself. It is a fundamental condition of the four-dimensional territory, not a local accident of the three-dimensional map. Living creatures participate through the Being Singularity Connection, or BSC, a tether connecting a shadow configuration back to the source structure. Biology functions as a receiver. The organism's neural architecture is a physical anchor allowing localized access to the source's experiential field. We must be careful not to conflate the law with the experience. The ECL is the grammar of the physical projection. It is not the same thing as the individual mind of the observer. Collapsing these categories leads to the error of treating physical laws as if they were personal psychology. The individual is a reader of the map, constrained by the geometry of their specific corridor. Consciousness is the experiential accessibility of the source. Living beings are the configurations that allow that reality to be lived locally within the shadow. Rigorous modeling requires maintaining the boundaries between these definitions. The cartographer's matrix summarizes the system. It highlights the specific category errors, like treating an artifact as a real substance, that lead to incomplete scientific models. The territory is the counterspace. The map is the shadow. Invariants are the stable marks on that map, while artifacts are the distortions produced by the projection. These components form a single architecture. The source experience projects through the ECL grammar to create the physical shadow, where invariants can be read through the corridors of living systems. Over-compressing these concepts into synonyms destroys their precision. The ECL is a law of response. The CEL is a condition of existence. Maintaining this distinction is what makes the framework a functional tool. By refusing to mistake the map for the territory, we can identify the true geometry behind our observations. We move past the invention of dark substances and begin to read the actual structure of the source.